Hi, Randy here, and today I want to give you an example of how the food processors fight back when us customers decide that we don't want the ultra-processed foods that's making us sick and killing us early. And this is an article actually in the mainstream media to report on a new study by an international group that says that isn't it great? We have plant-based beef and they're really advocating it. And they said, why aren't people buying it? Well, and they say it tastes good and it cooks like beef and it looks like beef. So what's the big deal? And it's good for the environment, right? Well, oh my gosh, people don't like ultra processed foods. Well, maybe ultra processed foods aren't that bad either because these they have plenty of protein in these fake meats and they can add the things like B12 that you can't get except from meat or supplement. We can fortify it like we do the milk, right? When milk is so changed, I recommend against commercial milk. You should get it from your local farmer as well as you can, and unpasteurized, unhomogenized. But anyhow, they refer to studies that actually recommend regeneratively grown animals so that when you get their eggs or their cheese or their milk, you're minimizing the impact on the environment. But they don't talk about any of that. They do mention that the beef is depends on GMO to make it bleed like beef. You have to genetically modify some organisms to make that red look. There's a slew of additives that have to be there to make it act like beef. And you actually have to do 3D copying to make the fiber feel like beef. Right. And then they say, oh, well, we've really reduced the salt. Well, most processed foods has high salt because you have to put the sodium in, and lots of additives have sodium in them as well to increase the likelihood of it tasting decent. Enhances the taste, stimulates the taste buds to recognize that the additives they've put in that are supposed to make it taste good. So there's a whole discussion of salt. Salt's supposed to raise blood pressure, and the blood pressure was the same when they fed beef to people for 2 months and then switched them to the fake beef. Their blood pressure was the same, but they said the people that after 2 months, the people on the beef, some of them lost a pound or two. Good. Maybe they didn't like it so much. Anyhow, what else didn't they do? Oh, they said that it's predicted that the demand for beef will go up 50% by 2050. Well, I looked at the study that quoted that, and they said if the demand for American style diet takes over the world, then we will have that. Well, if we could just stop promoting our bad stuff going to all the countries in the world, hopefully they will stick with some of their natural cuisine and not buy into this. So that's just a statistic to frighten us. There's also a terrible statistic that says that if we switched from beef to fake beef, we could reduce the impact on the environment by 97%. Well, it's very, very misleading because it sounds like you're going to improve the climate with a 97% reduction. But what they meant was the actual impact on from the beef manufacturer. But they've shown again and again and again when you use regenerative ways of raising beef, they don't create as much methane and you don't use all the nitrates and fertilizers that are one of the biggest sources of the bad gases for climate change, for the greenhouse effect. So when you look up what are the contributions, the animal agriculture is responsible for about 14% of the global emissions of greenhouse gases. The main thing is fossil fuels. Now, fossil fuels are releasing carbon that has been hidden underground for the rest of history since the time of the dinosaurs and before, while the metabolism of animals is a normal part of the carbon cycle. Now, the biggest problem with our agriculture raising animals is that we're farming soy and corn to give to these animals. If we put them out on marginal hills and had them change grass into food, we'd be much, much better. And all the regenerative farms are doing that now. So it's just this international organization. It's actually funded by the medical world to convince people that it's okay to eat ultra processed plant-based meat substitutes. So don't believe these kinds of what I call greenwashing, trying to pretend that when you're trying to sell ultra processed foods, you can say, oh, but it's better for the environment. Oh, what about health? Let's talk about health. Let's keep our cows healthy, our steer healthy, our chickens healthy, our pork healthy, and our people healthy. We can do all of that, all of it. Don't buy the commercially grown beef. Don't do it. Get good beef. Get organic beef and regeneratively farmed beef. And you don't have to have beef every day, but it's an important part of a full diet. If you want to be vegetarian, that's fine, but make sure that your eggs and your cheese and such come from healthy animals. So that's it for today. A little longer than usual, but it's really important to put on your filters to notice how we're being gaslighted into thinking, oh, well, if we just change our diet, stop eating like humans have been eating for the last million years, we'll save our planet. No, no, we need cars that don't burn as much and agriculture that doesn't use so many fertilizers and pesticides and nitrogen and herbicides and so on, poisons in our farms. So keep listening and subscribe to my YouTube channel and get into some of my programs. Thanks.